Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for virtual Bulldogs Behind the Scenes, featuring an exclusive look of the Ridge Bird Observatory. Well, my name is Molly Clevin, and I'm from the University of Minnesota Duluth Alumni Relations team. Today, we are going to take a behind-the-scenes look at the Ridge Nature Reserve to learn about the history, bird conservation research, education programs, and inspiring stories of the beauty and birds of Ridge. We are fortunate to have Janelle Long and Margie Menzies with us today. Janelle has served as the executive director at Ridge since 2007. She received her MED in environmental education at the University of Minnesota Duluth and a bachelor's in science and wildlife management and biology at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. She enjoys bridging the bird conservation research, education, and stewardship components through her career with Ridge. Janelle resides in Duluth, Minnesota with her husband and her 3 children. Margie joined Ridge as a naturalist in 2011 and is currently the education program director for Ridge. She provides naturalist programming for the general public and furnishes many colorful and meaningful experiences every day on the job. She loves birds, learning, and sharing the natural world with people of all ages. She has a BA in biology from Bethel University and an MA in education from the University of St. Thomas. Also is a naturalist at Sugarloaf Cove Nature Center up on the North Shore. During the summer, she's an adjunct member of the University of Minnesota Duluth Education Department, working primarily with student-teacher supervision. It is now my pleasure to hand it over to Janelle and Margie.
Thanks, Molly. Welcome and thanks to everyone for being here for this behind-the-scenes tour of Ridge. I'm Janelle Long, the Executive Director of Ridge Bird Observatory. We also have Margie Menzies, our Education Director, who I'll be tag teaming with today. Obviously, the best way for us to share the beauty and birds of Ridge with you is for you to come out and visit us in person during the fall bird migration. Now is a perfect time with the fall colors and plenty of birds migrating. However, we are happy to have this opportunity today to share some of that with you virtually. So let's begin with what makes Ridge a great place to view the migration, which starts with the location and geography. Ridge Nature Reserve is located at the western point of Lake Superior here in Duluth, Minnesota. The main overlook is high on a rocky ridge with an amazing view of the lake and of the birds, like this bald eagle that's in the photo. The birds can either choose to migrate over the lake, which would require expending a lot of energy, or choose the efficient route of the ridgeline following their food sources and utilize rising warm air pockets and updrafts. One of the coolest things at Ridge to see is what I think is a kettle. It's kind of like a tornado where they gain altitude and can soar many miles without even really flapping their wings. Typically, northwest wind days are good viewing days for kettles, with sometimes thousands of birds at a time. With an average of over 60,000 raptors and over 200,000 birds migrating past Ridge annually, we are well known internationally for the numbers and diversity of species we encounter. One of the raptors we're most famous for is the northern goshawk, which we count and band more of than any other site. It's also the bird represented in our logo. We've had birders from around the world come just to see this particular species. The second part to the geography significance during migration is the migratory pathway the birds are using. Each fall and spring, billions of birds are moving to and from their breeding habitat, primarily the boreal forests of Canada and the Arctic region. If you look at the purple arrows in this map, we're in the Central Flyway with birds traveling down the Mississippi River corridor as many head into their wintering habitat in Mexico, Central and South America. Here's a great web-based video link called Birdcast, produced by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, where you can view the volume of birds moving through the US during migration. Through weather station radar, they are able to show this as a daily update. You can especially see the mass movement of millions of songbirds as the colors get brighter and move through the evening hours. The arrows also show the direction of movement. It's a really cool tool to be able to show the migration in action wherever you are in the US. So with that mini geography lesson on why the location of Ridge is a great place to view the birds, let's dive into the history. While Ridge Bird Observatory, the organization, was established in 2004, the important history goes back almost a century. Starting in the early 1900s, Ridge was known better as a place for target practice and shooting birds. This happened before laws were put into place with international migratory bird laws and with the use of firearms within the city limits of Duluth. I've seen some interesting records from the Duluth Bird Club and others noting bushels of dead hawks found below Hawk Ridge during the late 30s and early 40s. However, thanks to laws put into place and to the early conservation efforts of this kind man, Hawk Ridge started to evolve into what it is today. Dr. Pershing Hoffland, also known as Jack Hoffland, was the first ornithology professor at the University of Minnesota Duluth. He is no longer with us, but I feel fortunate to have spent time talking with him early on in my career. He shared the story of how during the time hunters were shooting birds at Hawk Ridge, he'd put out a cardboard sign that would say, "Don't shoot hawks," and it would be gone the next day. So he'd do it over again and again. He noticed the importance of the site for monitoring migration of birds and started the early informal counts at Hawk Ridge in the 1950s. Students of his then joined in, including another former UMD alumni and professor, Dr. Jerry Nemi, who also served on the Hawk Ridge board for 10 years. Through further efforts of the members of the Duluth Bird Club, now known as the Duluth Audubon Society, funds were raised to purchase the land for the Hawk Ridge Nature Reserve. You can see some of these early pioneers in the pictures shown, such as Jan and John Green. Perhaps you even took a geology course from John Green at UMD. These funds raised were given to the city along with a loan for the Nature Conservancy to purchase the initial 115 acres. Later, an additional 200 acres of land were free conveyed from the county to the city. A trust agreement was then established for the Duluth Audubon Society to manage the property, but with ownership by the city of Duluth for long-term protection. The Hawk Ridge Nature Reserve in 1972 was finally established, and the official standardized raptor count and raptor banding research began, which means we are now in our 50th fall season. In 2004, the trust agreement was transferred from the Friends of Hawk Ridge group that was part of Duluth Audubon to the newly established nonprofit, now known as Ridge Bird Observatory. Bird observatories are found throughout the world, so it was fitting to have one created to manage this important site and bird conservation work. Hawk Ridge was also recognized by Audubon as the first important bird area in Minnesota. Hawk Ridge Bird Observatory now manages the beautiful 365-acre nature reserve and conducts our summer and fall bird research and education efforts there under the trust agreement with the city of Duluth. Hawk Ridge Bird Observatory is a 501c3 nonprofit member-based organization, which means your support matters. Our mission is to protect birds of prey and other migratory birds in the Western Lake Superior region through research, education, and stewardship. We wouldn't be able to put our mission into action without the amazing people involved, starting with the early founders and pioneers, our board of directors, staff, and volunteers. Each year, we are grateful for new, enthusiastic, bird-loving seasonal staff to join our team, with many staying multiple years. Our banding director, Frank Nicoletti, has been involved with Hawk Ridge for over 25 years, and Margie Menzies, our education director, for over 10. Several of the people in this photo from this fall are interns, trainees, and graduate students. We are proud of our Hawk Ridge Traineeship program, now currently in its 8th year. Nearly 100 people apply each year to be part of this program. This is a professional training experience offered to a select few looking to pursue a career or higher education in bird research or in environmental education. We have now helped grow the UMD biology department with many of our trainees transitioning into grad school there. Currently, we have 4 graduate students working on bird research in conjunction with Hawk Ridge. We also have approximately 70 amazing volunteers that help each year in numerous ways and contribute nearly 3,000 hours of service. Some of these volunteers are also our board of directors and committee members. The 2 in this photo are Gail and Jean, who have been helping at Hawk Ridge since the early years in the 1970s, from their high school days to now, with everything from helping spot birds with the early counters, assisting the education staff working events, assisting in the office, selling merchandise, and more. If you are a Hawk Ridge volunteer, thank you. Or if you'd like to join our team, we'd love to meet you. We'll share contact info at the end on how to do that. Next, we'll share with you a brief overview of our research, education, and stewardship programs. Margie will start with our research and education, as she plays an important role in both areas. I'll then circle back around at the end to talk about our stewardship efforts and how you can support and get involved with Hawk Ridge. So Margie, tag, you're it.
Thanks, Janelle. So as Janelle told you, this is our 50th consecutive year of our fall migration count and banding research at Hawk Ridge. Since 1972, over 3 million raptors have been counted and over 130,000 banded. The longevity of our data sets is extremely important in analyzing the health of our raptor populations. An average of over 60,000 raptors, that's a few more, are counted at Hawk Ridge each fall, as well as approximately 200 plus migrating birds, including all kinds of other species. Our count data is part of a greater collective of Hawkwatch data from North America that's included in what's called the Raptor Population Index. The index is used to assess and better understand the health of our raptor populations, as well as contribute to other environmental research. With raptors being at the top of the food chain, they're an important environmental indicator species. Declines and changes in their population can indicate bigger environmental concerns. Every year we start counting on August the 15th and end with the fall season about the end of November, depending on weather. There is definitely a parade of birds that travel through in the fall. Young birds usually are the start of the parade, with adults coming later. Females come before males usually, and birds that have the longest distances to go will be towards the front. Osprey, for example, are some of the early departure species. They're fishing birds that don't dive deeper than about 3 feet. So as fall progresses, the weather cools, so does the water, and the fish head deeper down in the lake for warmer conditions. So the osprey need to move on to warmer climates. Later season birds, more in the October region, are moving regionally, and their movement is largely optional depending on what conditions are there. Some may choose to winter in southern Minnesota or head on to points further south. In addition to counting during the fall migration, we also have a fantastic spring migration, which is a different critter than fall altogether. For one, we don't see the lake funneling bird traffic straight through Duluth like we do in the fall, so the numbers that we see in the spring are not as high. An average of 26,000 birds are counted in the spring. This count also takes place on the opposite side of Duluth. The fall count is off East Skyline Parkway, and the spring count takes place off West Skyline. In Duluth, we're lucky to have 2 such incredible locations for viewing fall and spring migration, and consequently, this makes Hawk Ridge one of the few major hawk count locations able to do both a fall and a spring migration count. Spring count officially begins on March the 1st and continues through May the 31st. And the fall migration is a little bit more leisurely, with birds not in a big hurry to reach a destination. Spring has its own raptor parade, and bald eagles are always the front runners beginning the movement, often in late February. Spring is the reverse of what we see in the fall, where we see the young birds come first. We see greater numbers of some species in the spring than we do in the fall. Bald eagles being one, but also turkey vultures and often red-tailed hawks. And it's often most often the adult birds coming before the juvenile birds. A new North American record for bald eagles seen in a spring count was set in 2019 with over 7,700 eagles counted. We also set a new single day count for bald eagles with 1,076 seen. I was there that day and can vouch for this being an incredible sight to see. Just imagine being able to scan the sky with your binoculars and literally be able to see more than 100 birds, all bald eagles, spread across the sky. Breathtaking. Our counters have the best seats in the house, which is a good thing since their job is to count everything that goes by. You can see some tools of the trade here. Spotting scope, There's clickers. One of the counters is putting things in electronically. Backup clickers for when things get really crazy, which sometimes happens frequently. Banders will, or counters will scan different sections of the sky. They'll be responsible primarily for one region of the sky and then compare notes with each other, confirm identifications and that sort of stuff as they're moving along. They also play an important role with our banding lab. As the birds start to come through, they're able to prime the pump, so to speak, and let the banders know what's headed their direction. And the banders can keep track of that and help let them know what's coming their way, and the banders can then set up specialized techniques for catching different kinds of birds. So there's just recognizing something off in the distance. The largest single day count for birds was 698 broad-winged hawks counted in a single day. We have a count summary. You can go on our website and look at this and see up-to-date information. This is part of the Hawk Watch that is part of the Humana, the Hawk Watch, Hawk Migration Association in North America, that combines all of the hawk counting data across the country. And it's just an amazing way to keep track of what's happening. This is raptors alone, but you can also travel to other locations and compare them to see what's happening from one place to another. Plenty of ways to spend lots of time looking at data. During the migration, our full count can also be viewed in real time, live, by clicking the live count link from our home website at hawkridge.org for up to the moment accounts of what's flying by of all of the species of birds. This count, this year we've had an amazing count of blue jays. So if you look at this graphic on the left side, you see that big green block? That's likely not to be passed up by anything else. We have seen so far this year 59,319 blue jays, and they're still coming. That record blew the last high count, which was actually last year, of 50,646 out of the water. We keep a count board to help us communicate with the public on what's happening. We can see what's happening today, what happened yesterday by comparison, and what's going on in the season so far. People can also look at record count numbers and see how close we are to records from past seasons and predict which records we will break this year. Seems like every year there's at least one record broken. The Blue Jays have done one. We'll see if we do more than that this year. In addition to counting, the other key component of our research is our banding project. During the fall, it's pretty much a 24-hour operation with banding songbirds in the early mornings, raptors, hawks, falcons, eagles, etc. through the day, and owls at night. All of the banding data is submitted to the federal USGS bird banding lab, which helps fill in more of the puzzle pieces important to bird conservation. Through banding records, we are able to learn about migration movement, breeding, wintering locations, age, and collect other biological information from birds in the hand. In addition to raptors, we also band songbirds in the early mornings. Just as the raptors have their sequence of birds moving through, so do songbirds. The earliest migrators tend to be species of flycatchers and early warblers. Note our current top 5 species of songbirds banded at our station. It's amazing, and it bounces around from year to year. Thus far in the fall season, we've banded over 800 birds of 58 different species this year. There's always something colorful happening with songbird banding. Compared to fall migration with a population of literally here today and gone tomorrow birds, our summer banding efforts tell us quite a bit more about the summer residents of Hawk Ridge. MAPS project is a program that Hawk Ridge is participating in. And MAP stands for Monitoring Avian Productivity and Survivorship. The goal of MAPS is to learn more about what's happening during breeding season. Nets are set in the same locations year after year and sampled during the same 10-day periods for 7 sessions every summer. We learn which birds are returning to the exact same places to nest and how successful they've been in rearing young. For example, a veery, a sweet singing type of thrush, which does an incredibly long 2-part migration every year, first to the southern Amazon basin and then again to points further south in South America, has returned and been recaptured 4 times from 2015 through 2020 at Hawk Ridge and is a minimum of 7 years old. Try taking that kind of round trip under your own power once, let alone twice every year. This is a white-throated sparrow. Weighing the bird is a little tricky. They're not likely to step on a scale for us. So we weigh the bag and the bird and then the bag itself and subtract to get the weight. Quick, get that band on before the bird Houdini works its way out of your grip. I'm making use of specialized pliers here to open up the band. It fits like a bracelet around the bird's leg and is designed to easily slide up and down. Putting it on there, making sure that it's tightly put together and just making sure that it can't catch on anything. And you can see, there you go, sliding it up and down the bird's leg, making sure everything is all set. Each bird band has a unique 9-digit number, and we calculate and collect a whole bunch of other data from each of these birds: weight, wing chord, wings and species, those kinds of things. Try to get as much information as you can while we've got the bird in the hand. Oh, here's another smaller bird. This one's a Nashville Warbler. And as we band these birds, we try and figure out as much as we can. They're amazing to watch. Oh, and Molly, when Austin and Molly came to visit us, she got her chance to release that Nashville Warbler back to the wild and to continue on its fall migration. We have the largest raptor banding operation in the country, averaging about 3,000 hawks and owls every year. This is one of the day shifts at Hawk Ridge. Let's take a look at what happens at night. Our owl banding research also started a few weeks ago, with northern saw-whet owls and long-eared owls being our 2 most common species. On average, about 1,200 northern saw-whet owls are banded at Hawk Ridge. Over 600 have been banded so far since about September 15th. These are amazing 6-inch high, enormously cute little owls. We also band between 75 and 100 long-eared owls every year. They generally start migration just a little bit later than the saw-whets, and they've not yet started moving through in a big way this year. There's a large network of banders who band saw-whet owls across the country. Hawk Ridge bands more saw-whets than any other station, but the wide network of saw-whet owl banders helps us gain recovery information about the saw-whet owls. We've learned that owls that migrate through Duluth can end up in Western Canada and all over the Eastern US. Our recovery data suggests that more than migrating south, most birds are migrating more to the east than to the south. Our 2020 banding season was an exceptional one for owls, with more than 1,900 owls banded. A good diversity as well, with 6 different species banded, much more than a normal year, which we generally catch 3 to 4 species. One unusual character is pictured in the bottom right of this slide. This is an eastern screech owl, a bird that is normally not even found in this region of the state. However, this owl seems to be expanding their range as it has been caught for 4 falls running at the Hawk Ridge banding station, and obviously has taken up residence here. We're eagerly awaiting the capture of another screech owl or young eastern screech owls, but so far, no luck there. Equally fascinating stories are to be told about the raptors that we band at Hawk Ridge. The single most banded daytime raptor is the sharp-shinned hawk. Here's a picture of Lula, one of our younger Hawk Ridge volunteers, holding a sharp-shinned hawk for a little size comparison. Sharp-shinned hawks are mighty predators, but what's with the picture of a wild turkey? Seriously? One of our former UMD grad students was doing a study to determine what the diet of a migrating hawk might be. Is a migrating bird eating the same thing it eats during non-migratory season? Taking swabs of the outspout, technically known as the cloaca, of captured raptors to figure out what they're eating provided some expected answers and some unexpected ones. Strangely, wild turkey DNA in the swabs of several sharp-shinned hawks caught during spring migration in April. How did that happen? Several thoughts came to mind. Maybe the sharp-shinned was finding and eating young turkeys. Further investigation revealed that Minnesota's turkey youngs were born in late May to early June, so way too early for that. Maybe these birds were finding roadkill. But sharp-shinned hawks have not been documented eating carrion. However, turkey hunting season in Minnesota is in April and May. Perhaps these sharp-shinned hawks were finding dead turkeys as a byproduct of the hunt. Maybe these Sharpies were taking advantage of carrion during migration. Makes a certain amount of sense as migration takes birds through unfamiliar territory. Definitely more study needed. Another of our grad students is working on another interesting question. We see a fair number of dark morph red-tailed hawks at Hawk Ridge during migration. According to accepted ideas, the eastern subspecies of red-tailed hawk that comes through here does not have a dark morph form, only those in the west. So the birds that come through, are they western birds that are blown off course, all these dark morphs that we see, or something else at play? Red-tailed hawks are literally found nearly everywhere in North America with a number of subspecies. This picture shows a dark morph bird on the left and a light morph on the right. Both of these birds were fitted with transmitters that will check in and provide location information while in cell phone range. When out of range, they'll continue to log information until they're back in range again and then report back in. The light morph bird was banded and fitted with a transmitter and blood drawn. Initially, this bird, and this was last fall, this bird was wintering in the Rice Lake, Wisconsin region, but at some point over the winter ceased to transmit. And it's either thought that the transmitter failed or unfortunately, maybe the death of the bird. The second bird, the dark morph, was banded in February 2021. This bird has moved around, but ceased reporting in far north Manitoba in late spring and hasn't been heard from in more than 100 days, roughly corresponding with the breeding season. Soon it will be the season when many red-tailed hawks migrate through. We're hoping this bird will appear back in cell phone range during this fall's migration. Where are all these dark morphs coming from? And who are they most closely related to? We're hoping for answers to these questions. Sharpshins, here's a sharp-shinned hawk. They're woodland hawks equipped for speed and maneuverability. This is a young one, and we can tell that by the brown striping vertically on the chest, the brown color overall, and the yellow eyes that you can see. These are really fierce predators and very good bird hunters. They hunt birds smaller than themselves, but they can also easily take a robin or a blue jay equal to their size and sometimes even a little larger. They are woodland species that are equipped with these really, really long legs for reaching out and grabbing as they're flying through the trees. They have super long tails that can act as a rudder as they're steering back and forth through the trees and in pursuit of their prey. Pretty amazing to see. Here's another Sharp-shinned hawk. We were lucky to get two back from the banding station. This one's an adult. This one is at least 3 years old. And you can see they look different as adults. Gone is that vertical striping, and the back is now a slatey blue gray instead of that brown color, and the eye color has gone to a deep crimson color. Pretty amazing to see these birds. We take advantage of the opportunity to see them up close, and we can look at feathers. We do feather sampling on a number of different kinds of studies. And these birds, they have just amazing flexibility. They have 14 vertebrae in their neck compared to our measly 7, and are capable of turning their heads 270 degrees. Here goes Molly. She's releasing our immature Sharp-shinned hawk there, our hatchier bird. We also bring these birds up to the main overlook and get the opportunity to show them off to visitors and talk a little bit about who they are, where they're going, a bit about their natural history, so that people can begin to get an understanding. And then off it goes to continue its migration south. Some of these will travel as far south as Texas, Mexico, or even Central America. Just as important as the bird conservation research we conduct is our education programs. Our educational staff help tell the stories of our research and convey its importance. Since 1974, naturalists at Hawk Ridge have been teaching others about birds, the migration, research, and why it all matters. Over 6,000 students learn from Hawk Ridge every year. We strive to make programs affordable for all bus and program fees, through bus and programs fee scholarships. Education are up at Hawk Ridge every day, weather permitting, September the 1st to October the 1st. In addition to doing live bird demonstrations, we also point out birds as we see them, help visitors with IDing the birds and talking about their migration journey. We have approximately 18,000 visitors from all over the world that come to witness, experience, and learn about the fall migration at Hawk Ridge. As many as 85% of these visitors are tourists coming from outside the Duluth Superior vicinity. These visitors from everywhere provide a major economic impact on the Duluth community. Here's kind of a tour of things going on at the Overlook. This is our merchandise trailer. You can get all kinds of great Hawk Ridge t-shirts and hats and things like that. We are on the road on East Skyline, so people are set out along the roadway with their spotting scopes and binoculars. Staff are acting as count interpreters and pulling down and indicating where the birds are. We were lucky enough to have a bald eagle go flying right by when we were touring around with Molly and Austin. We have a number of volunteers and educators that work with small children and visitors of all sorts. We band children as much as we band birds, or well, almost as much, maybe not quite as much. Each gets their own unique band number like the birds, and we do measurements on those students, and it's amazing how many of them come back year after year to check back in. And we have their records and can mark a recapture on visitors as well as birds. We have a junior birder Raptor activity guide that's the younger set can be involved with. Varying ages can complete a variety of different kinds of activities, exploring some of the unique things about raptors, learning a little bit more about what it's like to be a naturalist. And if they complete their guide, they get themselves a Hawk Ridge Bird Observatory badge. Our education programming continues to expand through all seasons with outreach to schools, birding workshops, field trips, speaking engagements, and special events. One of the exciting new field trips is an international birding tour coming up in just a few weeks to Panama to visit during the River of Raptors there. We hope to reveal another great adventure soon for our 50th anniversary next year in 2022. back to Janelle to talk about stewardship and ways to get involved at Hawk Ridge.
Thanks, Margie. As mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, Ridge Bird Observatory now has the trust agreement with the city of Duluth to manage the nature reserve. We have a volunteer-led stewardship committee working on a number of projects to help maintain the reserve annually. Everything from volunteers working to eradicate invasive species at the reserve, maintaining trails, litter pickup, and working with the city to maintain viewing areas and facilities such as garbage and recycling pickup, portable toilets, road safety, and the unfortunate vandalism issues that we do sometimes occur. Hawk Ridge is used year-round not only by us for our bird research and education programs, but by many others, such as hikers, bikers, dog walkers, and more. We're hoping to get a better understanding of numbers of users throughout the year with electronic counters and through continued partnerships with other local community groups. So now let's take a short virtual walk on one of our trails at Hawk Ridge. Over 4 miles of trails intersect the reserve, which you can see on this map located on our interpretive sign at the main overlook, as well as on our website. We're starting at one of our main trail intersections on Boardwalk that was installed as part of an Eagle Scout project. You can also see the brown trail marker post. These posts were recently installed as part of another Eagle Scout project, which will then have trail names and direction decals to help guide people better on our trails. A fun little backstory on Kyle, who is the recent scout that installed these posts, is that he started coming up to Hawk Ridge when he was just 7 years old as a hawk watcher fanatic. He spent time with our count and banding staff, even getting his shirt autographed by them. His family became members and have continued to visit through the years. We love making connections like these. As we head up this section of trail towards Oldie's Knob, you'll see it's very rocky and not accessible. So one of the exciting projects we are currently working on, thanks to the Lloyd K. Johnson Foundation, is a master plan for new facilities improvements at the Hawk Ridge Nature Reserve. One of those improvements would be a new accessible trail that will be a loop trail starting near our main overlook area and back. Along the new accessible trail, we plan to have multiple education program areas, new signage, improved safe space for visitor viewing platforms, and seating at our main overlook, an amphitheater for larger groups, and even a nature playscape to engage more with our site for enhanced learning and more. We'll continue down the trail past our count platform towards our only dedicated outdoor classroom space for education programs. As you come into the program area, you'll see it's very basic with some wooden benches for no more than about 50 people. We have now outgrown the space with the numbers of groups requesting programs and would like to incorporate more interactive education throughout the nature reserve. Stay tuned for more to come on that, especially as we launch into our 50th celebration event next year. Yes, your support matters. Again, Hawk Ridge Bird Observatory is a nonprofit organization that wouldn't be able to put these people and programs into action without our wonderful donors. And as you can see from how our income sources break down, nearly 50% is coming from members and donors. Hopefully some of you are those. So again, thank you to all of our supporters for being part of the magic with us. If you're looking for ways to support, we invite you to become a member, volunteer, visit us, book a program, gear up with Hawk Ridge merchandise, and be sure to join us at our 50th anniversary event next September. Save the date for 9/22/22, September 22nd, as we kick off with the celebration of Hawk Ridge's past, present, and future. That'll continue into our annual Hawk Weekend Festival with a great lineup of events. We appreciate you being here with us virtually today, and we invite you to visit us in person anytime now through the end of October. We'll end with this beautiful clip of Margie releasing a rough-legged hawk, one of the beautiful species we'll see more of this month at Hawk Ridge, and then we'll move into some questions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Janelle and Margie, for the guided tour of Hawk Ridge. We are now going to transition to our live question and answer portion of the webinar. So we're going to switch on our video cameras here and get started. Perfect. Wonderful. Well, this is the time. If you haven't submitted a question, you can use the Q&A button on the bottom of the screen. I know that there are a few submitted, so we will try to get through as many as we can. The first question asks, how large is Hawk Ridge? in terms of acreage?
Yeah, great question. So 365 acres is the total acreage that we have at the reserve.
Perfect. And what is the range of error in terms of counting?
Ooh, that's a good question. And that's it is a big variable, especially with hawk watch sites throughout the country. I mean, each season, you know, you're lucky if you have some consistency with the counters that you have, and our counters are extremely skilled, you know, able to identify birds from far distances, identifying through call, just looking at how the birds are flying. So there's, you know, a lot of great skills and tools that they're using. But yeah, it's a tricky one, especially on those days when we're counting, you know, maybe 10,000 plus broadwing hawks. So I'm not sure if there's an exact answer for that, but good question.
And then how many, as a follow-up, how many on an average season for volunteers do you typically have that are actually doing the counting?
Ooh, yeah, that's another good question. So we do have paid seasonal staff. And so we do have volunteers that will help assist with that sometimes. Unfortunately, with COVID, the last couple of years, we have had to restrict our count research area as well as our banding research area. But oftentimes we will have a couple of volunteers that are helping. And even this season, we have volunteers that are helping right from the road in terms of spotting birds and, you know, pointing things out that the counters might be missing just from their angle of view.
Perfect. And this question, I think, is for Margie. You mentioned the Blue Jays and all of the Blue Jays coming in this year. So why are there so many Blue Jays migrating through Duluth this year?
Yeah, and Blue Jays are an interesting species. We think about them staying over the winter in some locations, but this time of year, there are a lot of young birds that were raised through the summer, and it's a dispersal. Their parents have basically kicked them out of the nest, and they're trying to figure out what they're supposed to do and where they're supposed to go. And some of them do take significant journeys to the south before they settle into their own home territories eventually. I've had return of Blue Jays that I banded and have come back and been found at a bird feeder in Iowa. So they're in their wandering phase, but they're figuring it all out.
That's good. And in terms of migration, where do the hawks fly next, and what is their route?
Well, it depends a lot on the bird. Some birds are going to go as far as South America. We have learned from banding that more often than not, they'll stay over the land than risk traveling over water. So most of them will not travel over the Gulf of Mexico if they're headed to Central America or South America, but some can and some do. Osprey, for example, no problem. The waters and osprey get along just fine, but a sharp-shinned hawk, not so much. Other birds like red-tailed hawks and bald eagles are not going to go as far south. They're going to go maybe as far as southern Minnesota or Iowa on into the prairie states, but generally not as far. So a lot depends on the species that you're talking about.
That makes sense. And then in terms of capturing and banding, what is the percentage of repeat birds that you have coming through each year?
That's a really good question. For banding that's done during the migration season, we are lucky if we see 3 to 5% of those birds again. The saw-whet owls, we tend to see more because of that big network of saw-whet owl banders. But other birds, I mentioned the MAPS program and the summer banding. There we have much better percentage of return because we're looking at breeding species that come back to the same location. There we might be 15, 20% return on those birds.
And then in terms of capturing, what is the process? How do you capture the birds to band them?
It varies a whole bunch, whether you're talking about owls or raptors or passerines, songbirds. If you're talking songbirds, we basically set up nets in areas where we think the birds are likely to fly through. They can't see it. They fly and their head goes through the mesh and kind of locks them into a spot, and they fall down to a little pocket. Very safe way to capture them. Their body weight is perfectly supported. That works really well for the smaller birds. When we do raptors, yeah, you need a little incentive to get the raptors to come in. And so we have lures that look like injured birds. Looks like free lunch is sitting right over there. Got to get it. And they're honed in on the prey rather than the net that's between them and that free lunch. And they get caught in the net, and the banders will rush right out and grab them. For the owls, we play calls at night and catch them in the nets that are constructed around where the calls are emanating from. So all kinds of strategies.
So thinking about where Hawk Ridge is located and development, how does home building affect the birds and bird migration?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we do often get contacted by places where they are thinking about potentially developing. And we are in a major migratory flyway. And there's been a lot of research and studies done and, looking at the altitudes and heights of flying birds during migration, and also preventative things if there are houses or buildings or anything, windows that have bird safe glass are another great way to help with that, since during the migration, the birds, they may not have anything that's reflective and they think they can actually fly through. And so unfortunately, a lot of birds, die because of window strikes. So there's, things we can certainly do. And we're always happy to work with people if they're thinking about something like that.
And then in terms of, again, population changes and migration patterns, given the summer that we just had with the drought, how do you think that's impacted migration?
Yeah, that's a great question. And with that drought, we know that there was less insect species. So things, that birds are feeding on, there was less of during that time. And so while we don't really know the breadth of the impact that's had, it's certain that there has been, just because especially the smaller migratory songbirds that, rely on that as a major part of their food source are going to be impacted, which then if there's less of those species, that's going to impact the other ones that are higher up on the food chain, such as our raptor species. And it'll be interesting. And I think that just, again, alludes to the importance of the data collection that we're doing, as well as throughout other, hawk migration sites within the US. And I don't know if you have any other expansion on that too, Margie. But
just a little tag on that one. We did notice that many species have started a little earlier than average this year, which is interesting. But one of the things that you learn when you've done 50 years of data gathering is that you can't just count 1 year of data. You need to consider the whole trends when you're trying to figure out long-term things. And so this is a little blip in the population, and it'll be interesting to see how that might impact things long-term. But it is a single event in a much more complex picture.
That makes sense. And in terms of publications that have resulted from monitoring these bird patterns up at Hawk Ridge, are you aware of any scientific publication that's been produced based on your research?
There are, yes. There's been, multiple research publications, everything from looking at specific species to looking, at real specific things, whether it's genetics or bioaccumulation of toxins. And one of the most important things, which we talked a little bit about earlier, is that we are one of the major contributors to the raptor population index. And that index in itself is what biologists and researchers are using to understand the health of our raptor population. And so that's something, it's a great tool that can even be accessed by anyone just online through the Hawk Migration Association of North America website, where people can get to that raptor population index, which was most recently updated in 2019, and they can look at specific species and what those trends are, even depending on what region of the United States they're located in. So we might be seeing a decline in American kestrels here in the Midwest, but out east, they might be actually increasing in certain areas or staying steady. So again, it's really putting all of those puzzle pieces together.
Also contributes to land use management decisions that are made, certainly for public lands, but also hopefully on some private lands as well.
Great, thanks. So we have some specific questions wondering about what raptor holds the banding record with the oldest band, and then which one has been captured the most. We can circle back too if you do.
Yeah, well, raptor lifespans seems to be most directly tied to size. Birds that are larger, like bald eagles, ages can be 35 to 50 years easily. Other birds, the smaller ones, tend to have shorter lifespans. We do have the longevity record for a number of birds from Hawk Ridge, one of my favorite stories is to tell about a sharp-shinned hawk that was banded as a hatch-year bird, released, and then recaptured at Hawk Ridge 11 years and 11 months later. That bird holds the longevity record for the longest lived banded wild sharp-shinned hawk. Birds in captivity do tend to live a little longer than the wild birds do. So there's quite a lot of variation in there. Red-tailed hawks, 25, 30 years is nothing. So yeah, off the top of my head, I can't spout the record ages for all of them, but that's something fun that you can do by going on the Bird Banding Laboratory website, and you can look at the longevity records of any bird you want to. The whole list is there. Fascinating stuff.
Wonderful. And then what is the rarest bird that you've seen personally at Hawk Ridge?
Yeah, I like that one. I just quickly coming to my mind, even though red-tailed hawks aren't rare, the leucistic, so it was almost a fully white red-tailed hawk that was actually caught at Hawk Ridge. It was seen and then it was banded, and we were able to release that up at our main overlook. And yeah, we had lots of amazing memories made that day with that special bird. So I would say that is probably one of the most memorable species, and rare in itself too.
Yeah, I come more from the banding perspective. Going out and checking mist nets is like Christmas. You just don't know what you're going to have. And one of the more unusual captures on a morning was a Sora rail. They're usually wandering around in wetlands. Well, that particular fall, it was so wet back at the banding station that a young bird must have figured it was wet enough to land and start bopping around, and ended up in the net. So that's fairly unusual for a bander to catch a Sora rail in the nets that are usually at a very dry spot.
Awesome, thank you. And then I think our last question that we'll ask is for someone new to birding. What would any advice you would give someone that's just getting into bird watching?
come to Hawk Ridge. And we love to work with birders of all ages, of all abilities. And I think that is one of the greatest things, is that, you know, birds are everywhere. And so we love to just start with the basics. If somebody's new to birding, new to Hawk Ridge, just even getting a pair of binoculars in their hands, showing them how to use them, just looking for those little things that can spark their interest. And it's great, you know, when we do have a bird in the hand to be able to show, just because you can certainly have that opportunity to get to see that bird up close and start building more connections. Any other little tips and tricks, Margie? I don't know.
Oh, you know, every bird has a story, and it's worth seeking it out and finding out that story. And banding is one way to do it, but just watching the birds in your backyard and your neighborhood, and enjoying their behaviors and seeing what they're doing. They'll blow you away every day.
Good. Well, thank you both again so much for being here. And we're running a little short on time. So if there were questions that weren't answered today, up on the screen here, there's contact information. Feel free to reach out to either Janelle or Margie, or you can reach out to our office at alumni@d.umn.edu. Additionally, if you don't have anything planned for next week on Wednesday, we have another behind the scenes series featuring the UMD greenhouse. That would be also a nice fit and follow up to this. So thank you again to both of you, and we hope to see everyone back online again. Thank you and have a great day.
See you at the Ridge.